What I have people do is literally go down their bank statements and look line by line at the individual transactions because you know your family, you know your habits, and you would probably be able to spot some unusual things right away. So maybe some spending that is out of the ordinary, maybe at a store or a restaurant that you didn't think your spouse would go to, or at a hotel across town, which might indicate an affair. But there's also things like transfers to another account that you didn't know existed, or to another bank that you didn't know your family did any business with. There are transactions that I think that most people can identify pretty quickly as being something that, at the very least, we need to ask some questions about it.
Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, and welcome to the Money and You Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and very excited to be with you today and talk about some really interesting things. We have an expert today on forensic accounting, and particularly how to deal with the financial ups and downs of divorce and how to take care of yourself during that particular area and time in your life, if that should be part of your situation. Our guest today has a really interesting background, actually a background very, in some ways, similar to mine. So I was kind of cracking up when I was reading her bio, because I didn't know this part. So I'm going to let you in on a little info on Tracy. Tracy Coenen has been investigating fraud for more than 25 years, but she didn't always want to be a forensic accountant. With a dream of one day being a prison warden, Tracy went to Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to get a criminology degree. A class on financial crime investigations reminded her how much she loved Encyclopedia Brown books as a kid. She continued her criminology degree, but added accounting and economics courses so she could sit for the CPA exam. And here Tracy is, finding money in cases of corporate fraud, high net worth divorce, and other financial shenanigans. Tracy, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. It's so funny. I love doing this podcast because I love meeting people like you and having these really interesting conversations. And I feel like I'm always surprised by people's backgrounds. So I was really interested in that because I had kind of the same thing. And I was doing some white collar crime investigation work as I was getting my criminal justice degree. And same conversation, I kind of, I realized that I had some interest in it, and then went back and did whatever I needed to do to sit for the CPA exam. So, yeah, kind of interesting. I'm super happy. We haven't had a person like you on the show yet, and we've done a lot of shows, and we haven't had somebody talking about the topics you're going to be talking about, and I think they're so relevant to people, and I think it's going to be a great show. So do you want to dive in and just give us a little more about your background and how you got into this, and what exactly forensic accounting is?
Yeah, as you said, I wanted to become a prison warden. I had this interest in the criminal justice system, still do, but I took this class on financial crime investigations, and it really got me started down that money path. And so I took all of those accounting classes, got my CPA license, and started doing some traditional auditing and accounting before I moved into specializing in fraud investigations. So as a forensic accountant, I like to say that I find money, which means I do fraud investigations. A lot of that is on the corporate side, dealing with executives who are hiding money or engaging in all sorts of money shenanigans. And it, spans to the personal side, where I'm dealing with divorce cases, or I might be dealing with someone who has been indicted for money crimes by the feds or something like that. So there is quite a wide range of what I do, but it's all the same skills. It's all involving tracing money and figuring out where money went, where it is now, how much of it there is, was, could be, etc.
Yeah, thank you. So interesting. for 2 years, I did the Limit Free Life show, which is all about career change and starting businesses. And we still talk about that a bit here. But I always love, as a little side element to this podcast, that most of the people who come on have had some kind of, career transitions in their life. So it's always fun, I think, for people to hear the background and just see how careers can evolve and change. In case you're feeling stuck out there, you don't need to. And so I always like the examples people set who come on the show and talk about that. So that's just very great. I want to talk. One of the things that I was so excited about with having you on is this show, as much as it's about money, we talk a lot about practical things related to money, but primarily my interest was in talking to people about their relationship with money, which a lot of people are kind of unfamiliar with what that is. But I think that is really highlighted when people get into a situation where money becomes a stressor potentially, and like divorce. I mean, of course, if you're involved in fraud and things like that, it's also a source of stress. But let's just stick with the life changes that happen to people, whether it's divorce or somebody dies or whatever. And your relationship with money is really highlighted. I mean, the fears that come up, the anxieties, whatever it is, it's a big time for that. So what do you see when you are interacting with people who are going through these life change periods in terms of their relationship with money?
Well, money is one of the most stressful issues in a marriage. And when you think about all the potential reasons why people do get divorced, money is always towards the top of the list. And in some ways, I think a lot of the issues stem from just a completely different outlook on money or philosophy behind money. So you can have in a relationship, one person is a big spender while the other person is a saver. And if they don't reconcile those two different philosophies before they get married, it really spells trouble for the marriage. And then you go from there, there's that philosophy of money. Then there is, in practice, what we do. And if you have one spouse who starts being dishonest about the money, starts being dishonest about what they're spending, where they're going, what they're doing, whether they're saving or not, saying, yes, we're going to save towards a house, but then they don't save and they spend it all of those kinds of things play into money problems in marriage, which can lead to the divorce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And, it's surprising how many people I have talked to, who have been blindsided by a partner with respect to money. So what are some of kind of the red flags that people might want to look at around this that might be indicating some problems with respect to honesty?
There are so many potential warning signs of financial infidelity or other financial shenanigans. And while there is a laundry list of them, of possible signs that you could see, I like to talk about some of the ones that we see most often when we are in the process or going towards divorce potentially, or in the process of divorce. Things like changes in behavior, becoming more secretive about the money, denying your spouse access to financial information, and doing things like having secret accounts. Those are some of the hugest warning signs that I see. Now, one of the problems, though, for a person who is in a marriage, who has never dealt with red flags of fraud before, who has never been exposed to fraud before, they say, I see some things that make me feel uncomfortable, but I don't know how worried I should be. Am I making a mountain out of a molehill? Mm-hmm. Or am I not taking it seriously enough? How do I know? So I run into that a lot.
Yeah, it is. And, some of these things seem like they might be sort of rare, but I can probably think of 5 people just in this second who have told me, yeah, one day, I thought my husband was starting a new business and I got online and there was, we'd had a couple $1 million in our bank account and all of a sudden it was zero, and there are a lot of these stories. And if I've been hearing them from people I actually know, it must be fairly rampant. Are there any kind of I know rampant might be a little extreme. It might have been the word.
No, it's not extreme at all. It's not, because I get asked this, so in divorces, how often are people hiding money or trying to cheat their spouse? And we don't know, because the thing about fraud is it's hidden. It's intentionally hidden. And so I can't say for certain how often fraud is there, but my best guess, based on 25 years of experience in this, is probably in about half of divorces, we have one spouse or both who is trying to hide money. So I think the word rampant is actually a pretty accurate word.
Wow. Well, and it really speaks to kind of the power balance in a marriage. I mean, I know you're not supposed to think about marriage that way, but each person in a marriage or a partnership or a business arrangement or whatever it is should be very aware of what's going on with the money, because when one person decides somebody else can kind of take charge, it makes people very vulnerable. And is that what you typically find is happening? There's somebody kind of not paying attention, feeling like somebody else is.
It's very, very typical for one spouse to manage the money. It is still, in this day and age, more often the husbands who are managing the money. And that's a function of they are still more often the major breadwinner. And so then it seems to make sense for them to have primary responsibility over the money. Now, one of the things that I see when I'm working with women in divorce is a level of shame because they weren't watching the money, or that they weren't actively involved in managing it. Oh my gosh, how did I stop keeping an eye on it? How did I let him handle all the money? Why did I trust him to do everything with the money? And I always tell women, please don't feel ashamed. Your reality is the reality for millions of women in the United States who have also trusted their spouse to handle the money. So it's not as much necessarily the handling of the money that's the problem, as is being completely hands off with watching what's going on. So even if you're not handling the money, you're not paying the bills on a day-to-day basis, you're not keeping on top of the budget, I always recommend keep looking at the accounts, at least on a monthly basis. Log in or get a bank statement or an investment statement and keep an eye on what's going on in that account, because if you're watching, you can head off a lot of problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I mean, what do you find in terms of how detached people can get? Like, are there people who never look at the accounts? Are there people?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We get people who never look at the accounts. As long as their needs are met, they're able to go to the grocery store when they need. They're able to buy themselves some extras when they want. And there's no real drama around that. Mm-hmm. It is pretty easy to then stay hands off with the money, mm-hmm. and to really not get involved at all in looking after it, because there isn't a need. And I like to back it up and say, you trusted your spouse when you got married. We don't get married thinking we're getting divorced. We don't typically get married thinking I'm marrying a liar who's going to cheat me. And so it makes sense. You stay hands off because you trust your spouse to manage the money. Mm-hmm. But like I said, staying an active part of looking after things is really important, because here's why. When we have a situation during divorce where we find that someone's been hiding money, it's actually pretty easy to find that money. In about, I say 90% of cases, it's pretty typical, pretty easy to find. Why? Because they're not very tricky with how they hide the money or how they cover it up, because they know their spouse is not looking. They don't have any problem transferring money out of the joint account into their secret account because they think their spouse is never going to look at that bank statement and see that transfer.
Wow. So interesting. I agree, though. I think when you get kind of in that groove of always being the one taking care of it, somebody's not looking, you would get a little loosey-goosey with how you did it. Yes. You wouldn't put that much strategy into it. It's really interesting. I mean, it's kind of a sad topic, but an important one, because, there are different levels. I mean, for people who may not know, there is actual financial abuse out there that happens. Yes. And, that's pretty extreme, but it also, I think, really speaks to this whole relationship with money idea, because we tend to think, I don't want to be so fixated on the money. That would make me kind of a bad person. I should be fixated on how much I love my partner instead. And I shouldn't even go there, sort of like what you were saying.
Well, if you think about how we were raised, I think you and I are probably around the same age range. We were probably raised at this time when you were told, don't ask people about money. Don't talk about money. It's impolite to talk about money, right? You were taught you never ask someone, how much did you pay for that? You, of course, would never ask them how much they make. You still wouldn't probably ask most people how much they make. But we were taught that talking about money was something to be avoided. And that has effects on people and spills over into their marriages where they still feel uncomfortable having those money conversations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this comes up most of the time with my guests. It's just this weird inability. I don't know if it's weird. I'm sure I have it too, so I won't say it's weird. But this inability to talk about money, whether it's with your friends, with your spouse, with anybody. It's like the only people you really feel comfortable talking about money with are maybe your tax accountant and your financial advisor. But even then, I feel like people still try to paint kind of a rosier picture than maybe what it is sometimes. So, I think, I think there's sort of just this thing that we all have to get over, that it just has to be talked about or we all get in trouble.
It has to be talked about. And in marriages, I tell my clients or people who are coming to me for advice that if you can have a weekly short sit down about the money, literally 5 or 10 minutes, but if you're doing it every week and making it routine, it becomes less scary and less of a big deal. Mm-hmm. So I would like to normalize those money conversations just as much as, the fact that I work in the area of divorce, I'm working on taking shame away from that process. Mm-hmm. That, divorce used to be a very shameful thing. It still is for some people. But the more that we talk about it, the less shame that I hope people feel. You needed to make a decision for your life. Let's talk about divorce. Let's make it a more routine and acceptable thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that shame shows up in a lot of places, doesn't it? Even for the person not looking at their family's money situation, some of that is just shame around, I don't really know what I'm looking at. I don't really know what to look for. It's like they sort of give up because they haven't educated themselves enough. And, I can look at these investment statements, but I don't even know what I'm looking at. So then, they just kind of stop. There's a lot to this, and I'm glad.
Well, and I go even back to there are people who don't know how to get their bank statements, and they're shamed there, mm-hmm. right? One of the things that I teach people who are getting divorced, I teach them what does this financial part of your divorce look like, first of all, but then what financial documents do you need to get? How do you get them? As simple to me as going online to online banking and downloading statements. I show people how to do that because if they've never done it before, they might have no idea where to start. And then showing them, if you can get your account statements and things, here's how you start looking at them and start getting some information from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you want to give a couple of little tips on that? Like if you were at all concerned, what would you be looking for? Was it just an unexplained change in the balance? Is it more than that?
Transactions, because your family, your habits, and you would probably be able to spot some unusual things right away. So maybe some spending that is out of the ordinary, maybe at a store or a restaurant that you didn't think your spouse would go to, or at a hotel across town, which might indicate an affair. But there's also things like transfers to another account that you didn't know existed, or to another bank that you didn't know your family did any business with. There are transactions that I think that most people can identify pretty quickly as being something that at the very least, we need to ask some questions about. It might not be a bad transaction right off the bat that we can recognize, but it might be one where we say, I need to know more about that.
Mm-hmm. And then you use those weekly conversations to ask the question. But not everyone's going to be forthcoming with answers. I mean, if they're already trying to hide money, they're not going to answer honestly these questions. So
I deal with people who are already in the process of divorce. So they're not even necessarily asking their spouse about these transactions. Gotcha. What they're doing is putting these transactions on a list to take to their attorney to deal with in the divorce process. So that, if there is inappropriate spending, let's say, someone goes through their bank statements and they find that their spouse has taken $50,000 out of the bank account over the last year at a casino, right at the casino ATM. those transactions are going to go on a list right away so that your attorney can present it to the divorce court judge and say, Judge, $50,000 was blown at the casino. I knew nothing about it. I need to get credit back for this when we're settling the finances in the divorce.
Interesting. Okay. So that's a big part of what you're helping people learn how to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I certainly, I talk to people who are entering marriage, in relatively good marriages, who want to improve their communication about the finances. So I certainly do some of that. But the bulk of my work, as it relates to married couples, is on the divorce side, when people have already made that decision to divorce and they are concerned about the money, or they already know that there has been something inappropriate done with the money, but they need to know the full extent of it.
Right. Okay. And what are, backing up a little bit, for people who are getting married or in good marriages, what are some of the safeguards that you can put up to just protect yourself?
Certainly, it is that regular looking at the account statements. So at least every month, one of the examples that I use is having your spouse get the monthly statements for their 401k account. Because it's their 401k through their job, only their name is on it. So your name is not on it. You wouldn't have rights to have access to that. But if they get those account statements and you're able to look at them on a monthly basis, you would be able to see if your spouse had withdrawn some money from that account. Typically, we're supposed to leave our 401ks alone until we get retired. But when people have problems like gambling addictions or other issues where they're spending money far faster than they make it, sometimes they're taking money out of the 401k account, taking early distributions, and you never know it until it's way too late. So looking at monthly statements is one of the biggest safeguards that I have people put into place.
What about who is having both people as signers on, all the bank accounts and things like that, and investment accounts? I mean, how important, and what can you tell us about how to set that up?
I certainly think that having both people as signers on the accounts can be helpful. I often talk to people about having accounts of their own as well that's only in their name, because that money is protected. No one can close that account without your knowledge or permission. No one can take money out of that account without your knowledge or permission. And so especially for someone who might be a stay-at-home parent and doesn't have an income source of their own, having money of their own that is protected in the event that something would go wrong in the marriage, that often becomes very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of an unusual question, but as you're talking, I'm thinking, how often do you see it on the side of maybe the woman who might not be the breadwinner having the secret accounts versus we're sort of assuming it's men, but...
I would say not that often. And when we do see it, I think that there is often an abuse situation going on. So I never recommend that people hide money from their spouses or have secret accounts. I recommend a separate account, but not a secret account. However, in those situations where there is some sort of abuse going on, it may be advisable to have that secret account.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. What is if you can give us kind of a little story or a scenario about one of the more extreme situations you've seen?
Oh, as far as hiding money, gosh, I have seen it all. I actually prefer to talk about the less extreme. I like to talk about the most common.
Okay.
Because what I most commonly see in marriages is that secret bank account where someone is shuttling off money to another account that their spouse knows nothing about. Sometimes it's because they want to use that money for secret spending, like maybe an affair or something like that. Other times that secret account exists because they are planning for a divorce. So it is quite typical to see that second account, and we might come upon that account again by a transfer from the joint checking account. And that account sometimes is also used for depositing paychecks or parts of paychecks in there. I actually, now as I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking of a case that I just did earlier this year where my client's husband actually had an account that he ended up in his deposition referring to as the secret account.
Oh, Lord.
He said the secret account was necessary to stop his wife from spending money. That wasn't really the scenario. He didn't need to stop her from spending money, but he was taking pay of his and putting it into the secret account and spending it in a way that his wife would have never approved of. And we ended up with $800,000 over a period of a couple of years that he had spent inappropriately from that secret account.
Wow. So that was just money that never even made it to the joint account.
She had no idea that money ever even existed. He was getting bonuses from work and she never even knew it existed.
Wow. Okay. That's a big find. Yeah. Okay. Well, I could just talk about these stories all day because it's actually really interesting. But let's talk for a minute about your book, Show Me the Money. Or
Find Me the Money.
Find Me the Money. Thank you. As I said that, I'm like, no, that's somebody else's book. Yeah.
Right. No, it's a play on Show Me the Money from Jerry Maguire. That's where we got the title from. And it's all about finding money in divorce.
So how does the book help people? What's inside that book that women or men, anybody should take a look at?
So the book is written as a story. So it's kind of a little novel about a woman named Jackie who left her corporate job 10 years ago to stay at home and raise children. And while she was doing that, her husband started having a long-term affair. It eventually got exposed and they're getting divorced. And Jackie is concerned about what's been happening to the money in their family. And so Jackie embarks on finding out on her own where the money went. And she uses my product, the Divorce Money Guide, to walk through her finances, to work with her attorney, to learn more about her financial situation, to get her account statements, to go through them and ultimately find out that her husband had the secret bank account, the secret credit card, and she was able to figure out how much he had spent on his affair partner and things like that. And so the book is an easy read to give people an introduction to some of those schemes that are used, some of the more common ways that money is hidden, and how average people who don't have any accounting or numbers expertise can find that money if their spouse is hiding it.
Okay. Wow. That's fantastic. I love that you put it into sort of a story format. That's makes it a lot more fun, actually.
It's so much easier to read, and you're able to learn the concepts without feeling like you're reading a textbook. Mm-hmm. We've had some really great reviews of it for people who've said, oh my gosh, first of all, it's a small book, so it's a quick read. I didn't think I would get this much out of it. I just had a woman email me a week or two ago saying, I used the techniques in your book and I actually found money that my husband is hiding. Wow. So it's really gratifying that it's working as intended.
That's so funny. Listening to this, I'm like, anybody listening is going to want to go snoop around now. Even if their husband seems great or their wife seems great or whatever, right. It's like, you just kind of, it's making everybody want to just check it out and see, just in case.
Well, and I love the word snoop myself because I'm a fraud investigator. I snoop around for a living, right? But using that phrase brings up something really important because what I find when I'm working with people is they feel sometimes a little weird about digging into the family finances and kind of quietly looking for what's been going on with the money. They do feel like they're snooping. And I have to remind them, this is your money too. When you get married, your finances come together. This is your money too. And it is not snooping. It is finding out information that you're entitled to have as a spouse.
Yeah, that's actually such a great point. I'm so glad you said that. Because that's the way it becomes when you have, especially when you have that situation where you're not talking about it together very much and one person is managing it and the other is sort of in the background. That's when it does start to feel like, okay, my role is to, let the other person do their thing and just support them or whatever. And so when you do want to see more, it does feel like you're kind of snooping, and you're right. You lose sight of the fact that it's everybody's money and it should be talked about and looked at. And I think that's it's just a psychological aspect of this that we don't think about.
Well, I'm so passionate about changing the narrative surrounding divorce. And part of doing that is by thinking about the words that we use for divorce. Now, I primarily work with women who are getting divorced. So the Divorce Money Guide, which is my online program to help people find that money on their own, I market it primarily to women. The book, I market primarily to women. And it's just a function of who I mostly work with and who has expressed interest. But we talk about changing the narrative because I get trolls on social media who are upset that I'm talking to women and, they express frustration with me and they talk about how the women are taking money from the men in divorce. And I say, wait a second. When we're divorcing, nobody's taking from someone else. We as a couple own assets, and those assets are going to be divided. Mm-hmm. But it is not that one person is taking away from the other, one is being deprived while another is being enriched. It is a process of we as a married couple own things together, and we are now going to divide it. And so that language that we use is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you want to divide it fairly. So That's where you can come in and make sure that it's fair. Yeah, I love that. When did that occur to you, just to feel this? I mean, it seems like you're on a bit of a mission and this is really important to you. How did that come about?
That is a great question. So I've been doing forensic accounting for 25 years. And in that time, only about a third of my caseload has been in the divorce area. 2/3 of it has been doing corporate stuff and white collar crime stuff. About a year and a half ago, I was in a coaching group that I belong to, and we were talking about things that bother us in our business. And I was saying, I'm bothered that I can't help more people with their divorces because I get calls on a weekly basis, typically from women who are saying, I think my husband is hiding money. We're getting divorced. I need to hire someone like you. But the truth is that forensic accountants are expensive and out of the reach of probably 90% of the people or more who are getting divorced. And I said, I wish there was another option for them, something that would help them find that potentially hidden money on their own. So that's how and when I came up with the idea for the Divorce Money Guide. And I initially thought, well, if I could make something that would walk someone through this process and I'll give it away for free, I then decided that no, this is actually a legitimate business idea. And it's a product that does have to be a paid product because I want to put more into it. I want to really make it a robust thing that someone who is concerned about money in their divorce could literally take it from point A to point B and get all the way through the process of finding that money and presenting it in court with their attorney in front of the judge and getting back the money that's owed to them.
Wow, all on their own.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that because I think you're right. I have no idea what the percentage is of people who actually hire the forensic accountant in a divorce situation, but my guess is it's low because,
It is. If someone goes to their attorney and says, I think my husband's hiding money. The attorney says, great, where's your proof? Well, I don't have any. Okay, you're going to need to hire a forensic accountant. Mm-hmm. How much is that going to cost? Probably $10,000 to $15,000. And for most people, divorce is already really costly. I just don't think most people going through divorce can afford another $10,000 or $15,000. They just can't.
Yeah, you don't feel like you can, and because you have no idea what's on the other side of it. When you talked about the $800,000, the $10,000 that you would spend on the forensic accountant wouldn't, there's a big return on that. But how do you know? You have no idea when you go into it. It just feels
like. And that client was in a position where she could afford to hire me to find that because she had a complicated situation. But I always go back to most of these situations are not that complicated. It's going to be something as simple as a secret credit card that you don't know existed. But I can show you a handful of different ways to uncover whether that secret credit card exists. And none of it requires forensic accounting skills.
Yeah, so somebody who really is not very savvy with money at all could do your program.
Absolutely.
And by the end, I would imagine they are going to be much more savvy. So going forward in their life, it's almost a financial literacy, kind of program, I'm guessing, as well. So the next chapter in their life, they're going to be better off for it, whether they find money or not, it sounds like.
Absolutely. You might ask yourself, well, what if I go all the way through the program and I don't find any hidden money? I would say, actually, that's pretty great that your spouse hasn't been hiding money from you. But by the time you're done, you're going to know so much more about your money. When you think about getting divorced and living your life going forward as a single person, you need to know, how much does my housing cost? How much does the car cost us every month? How much are we spending on groceries and dining out? And so even having that base of knowledge for your budgeting going forward is going to be so helpful to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I so agree, especially if the situation is that you're sort of in the dark anyway, then you haven't been paying attention to money. You haven't been teaching yourself anything. So yeah, so either way, it seems like a win. Do you ever find people who are very knowledgeable about their money and yet there's still some kind of fraud going on that they haven't detected?
I'm trying to think of a situation in which that occurred that I worked on, and I can't come up with one. I think usually, my clients have been very hands-off with the money.
Okay. So that's the typical kind of characteristic that you're finding. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, how can they find your program and find you?
They can find me at my website, fraudcoach.com, because I like to say I am your fraud coach as you're going through your divorce. I'm also on social media everywhere at Divorce Money Guide. So Divorce Money Guide is our number one product. And so that's what my handle is everywhere. But you can find everything about me at fraudcoach.com.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And is the program digital, or do they get to connect with you during the program? How does that work?
Great question as well. So the Divorce Money Guide is a standalone product that takes them through videos, worksheets, checklist, and ebook, totally self-paced. But we do show you how to get through it in less than a month if time is of the essence for you and you just kind of want to get through this whole thing. But if you are needing some one-on-one help, we have a couple of options. We have a group coaching option. So every week there's new content. There's Ask Tracy Anything in our group, things like that. And then we have a one-on-one option. So if you have a little bit more complicated situation, really need some one-on-one work to help you strategize and get some more help, we offer that as well.
That's fantastic. Well, it's really interesting work, and it's also a great service to people that you're providing this, because I do think that's a tough spot for somebody to be in, where they just don't know, and it's a big mystery what's going on out there.
Well, service is where this all began, right? I wanted an option for people who didn't have any other way to figure out what's been going on with the money. And our goal is to help 1,000 women a year have better financial outcomes in their divorces. And that's what we always keep top of mind.
One more question for you. Would this be appropriate if you have, for example, a business partner and you're sort of suspicious in that situation?
I would say no, because that's going to be a little bit more complicated. Although somewhere down the road, I do foresee a money guide coming out that relates to business issues. And so we have ideas for future money guides, because the techniques that we use in divorce are so applicable to so many other situations. When you're talking about potential money shenanigans with estates, or when you're talking about the business interests, like you mentioned, there's a number of different ways we can apply these same techniques. And so we're hoping in the future to come out with more money guides.
Yeah. Okay. That's fantastic. Well, I hope people will follow you and get your book, which I'm assuming is available on your website and also probably Amazon. Is that correct?
It's available on Amazon. Yes. Okay. Find Me the Money.
That's fantastic. Okay. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for joining us today. This was super interesting. I'm sure it's gotten some people thinking about what they might want to, look at, or what conversations they might need to have, and just see how that goes. I would think that's a red flag in itself. If you try to have these conversations and they continually don't go well or get derailed somehow, would you consider that a red flag?
Absolutely. When you're trying to gather information and ask some questions and you're being shut down or met with anger, I usually am questioning what there is to hide at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm thrilled that you came on today, and I'm sure you've got a million fantastic stories to tell. So hopefully, do you tell any of those on social media or anywhere else? You can't really share the specifics, I know.
But I can anonymize things.
Yeah.
So yes, we do talk on social media about some of the stories for sure.
Well, so great to meet you. So great to have you on today. I hope people will connect with you. Your website is up on the screen there. And thank you so much. This was great information and gives people hope, too, that they don't have to do this alone. And there are people like you trying to help them through the process. Well,
thank you so much for having me. It went fast because we had so much to talk about, but hopefully there will be some tips and and we can encourage people. I know divorce is a terrible time. I have seen it all, but with help from professionals, people who care, hopefully you can have a better outcome in your divorce.
Yeah. And, to swing back to the relationship with money, this is a good opportunity to rework your relationship with money, just like you'll probably rework whatever future relationships you have with actual people. Reworking that relationship with money, it's a pivotal point. And so it's always important to be working on all our relationships. And so I think, as difficult as it is, it also has some learning opportunities attached to it.
Agreed.
Okay, well, we need to wrap, but thank you so much. And I'll look forward to continuing to connect with you and the work you do. And I encourage people to look into your program and get your book and follow you.
It's been great chatting with you. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thank you, audience, for being here. We love having you on the Money and You show. Boy, I've tangled up a few words here today. So the show is brought to you by the Limit Free Life Company and UBN Go, who's producing this show. Thank you so much. And we are found on all the podcast platforms. You can find us on Roku and the Limit Free Life YouTube channel. And we are looking for your questions for future shows. So please send me an email, Michelle, 2 L's, at limitfreelife.com. And let me know what you're interested in, what your questions are. And we'll see if we can get a question answered on every show. I think Tracy today answered a lot of questions for people. And but if you have a specific question that you need an answer to, please let me know. We'll try to do that on air. So thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week.